Hi, Grace.
Hi, Norma. How are you?
Good. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm just
No
gonna get
problem.
something, okay? I'm just
Sure.
early.
Hi,
You're fine. Hi, Paula.
1 second, I can't hear you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Absolutely. I had turned my sound down on my laptop. All right, can you see me okay?
Yes.
All right,
Yep.
I'm looking at my camera. Am I looking right at you here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay, we're good. Good, now I can set up everything and get organized.
Okay, great.
Great. So I will admit people to the waiting room whenever you're ready. We can wait until 1, but I will just kind of sit here and monitor in case
Okay,
there are
so
any
this is,
latecomers.
okay, so this is my story. In the end, I have to make something for dinner anyway, so I'm doing a little bit of demo. Sometimes I do 2 screens, but I'm literally just gonna be like doing this. So like you can see what I'm doing, putting things in the pot, explaining how it works, okay?
Great.
All right, I want to get a couple of things out. Okay, this
Sure.
is good. I was so hoping to be there, you know?
Where do you live?
I'm in the DC area.
Okay. Oh, so you're not so far.
No. I would have, yeah, like I said, I would have been very happy to,
Yeah. So did they just say we're not doing in person? Is that what happened?
yeah, it was scheduled for in person. This was going to be like my first in person event. But then what started happening like over the last couple of months or so is like everything was just switching to virtual. Like I think people just wanted to play it safe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is fine. Like I'm higher risk, but like I almost feel like there's just such a small window right now to like do things like this.
So
And
true.
I just don't know that how long it's going to last for. So,
It's so true.
oh. So you work with the JCC or you work with Bethel?
Yeah, I'm with the JCC. I work for the foundation. I do fundraising events, that kind of stuff.
Excellent. That's
Mhm.
great.
And so Lana was asking all the staff if we were available to sign up for one of these to just kind of be like sit there and accept people on the waiting list. And so I looked at all the speakers and I was like, oh my God, this looks perfect. We keep kosher. I love to cook.
There you
This was
go.
a no-brainer.
Excellent. That makes me happy. That's
Now
all
I'm
good.
gonna just have to go buy an Instant Pot, which I've been putting off because my
So do you
kitchen does
have
not
like,
need another appliance.
do you live alone? Do you have kids? Like
No, yeah,
where
I
are
have
you in your,
kids. Yeah, I have 2
okay.
kids.
So it's just so fast. This is the
I
thing. And if
know.
you're a working mom, like literally, like when your workday's over, like you can throw things in this pot and they're done so fast. And the other thing that you're gonna love, and you're gonna hear me talk about this more, is that I do entire meals in the pot. So for example, I make spaghetti bolognese in the pot, the pasta, the sauce. I don't have a colander to wash, one thing to wash, which is like kind of a big deal. I do like stews at the bottom and I put a rack and then I put a bowl with water and rice. I cook the rice and the stew at the same time. And when you open the top, your whole meal is done. Like,
Yeah, that's amazing.
you know, like you're busy. How old are your
I
kids?
know. They're 1 and 4.
Oh my goodness, so cute. Hi Norma, how are
They're little.
you?
Hi, how are you, Paula?
Good. Did you get my
I did.
my intro? Good. Because
I got
every
your,
once in a while I'll do an event where somebody starts literally reading a bio, which I don't even know where they found. That's like my 8-year ago bio. And I'm just like rolling my eyes, like smiling. This is so great. And I'm like, okay,
well,
that's
wait
it.
a
I'm just
second.
ending it.
Now I'm going to look because I do have a bio that I think I took off of a website.
What I emailed you today is the bio to use.
Okay, I'm going to look. I'm going to look.
It's short, tight. It's like perfect. So just use that one, please, Norma. Yeah, people get it off my website, but then it's really long there. It's not like designed for something like this. So I have one on I have one always ready to go. All right, I'm just looking through to make sure
You mean
everything's
just
good.
it's very 3 sentences? French trained Paula does cooking classes.
No, it was longer than that. Hold on. What I sent today was, can you guys still hear me? I'm just going into my
Yeah.
email. What I sent was, Paula Shoyer, here is my bio.
Oh, okay,
Paula
I got
Shoyer,
that. I'm sorry, Paula. Now I see it. I didn't
see it. Paula Shoyer,
Now I
the
have
kosher
it,
baker, is the author of. It's like 2 parts. Okay.
Okay, because I mean, I do have a nice bio, but I'm happy not to read it if you don't want it.
No, tell me what you have. I'm just
it says
curious.
here, Paula Shoyer, the kosher baker, is the author of 5 cookbooks, and I name them.
Fine.
She's a freelance writer for the Washington Post, Hadassah, Joy of Joy of Kosher?
Yeah, it's up to, yeah, it's out of date already. So like, yeah, so
Okay.
just, yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Okay. I will read
That's
this
why I send
bio.
one out. That way it's easy. And okay, thanks. Thanks for swapping that out.
Oh, no problem at all.
All right, I'm just going over some things here. And my lighting's good, I can see. I can see my sign. I can see my other books when I'm here.
The only thing is
All
the
right.
top of your head is cut off.
Well, yeah, when I start talking, I'm going to be here. I'm just
Okay.
standing here
All right.
because I
Okay.
am organizing my things. I can easily do that. That is an easy one.
You know, Paula, I went to a Hadassah online, a virtual, where I don't know, I think it was a Passover one. You cooked like a lot of things in a really short time, like an hour.
Was it with the Instant Pot or was it like?
No, it wasn't Instant Pot. It was just, I think it was a Passover. Must have been a year ago at least.
Oh, probably, yeah.
You did it for Hadassah and, you know, like the national organization, and I signed up, and I still have all those recipes, and
Oh, I'm so glad. That's great. Yeah,
it was great.
yeah, I lost count already, but like I've taught like 220 virtual cooking classes in the last whatever. So it's pretty crazy. All right, I'm just going to go quickly over my talk for a second and make sure if you have any questions, just shoot, because I'm just like making sure I have all my stuff here.
Sure. So Norma, can you hear me? My only job is to just let people in, right? Once
Right,
we're
and
starting.
then I will read Paula's bio as she sent me, and then I'll tell people to put their questions in the chat, or when Paula
Okay, and so in general, so in terms of questions, like when I'm doing the recipe, which is going to be pretty quick, you can interrupt me at any time when I'm just talking about the recipe, because I'm going to get that done kind of early on in the talk and then talk about the book kind of afterwards, just because it takes time. So not a lot of time, but I just want to time it right. So when I'm cooking and doing anything, interrupt me at any point with a question. But if I'm speaking and like mid-story, just kind of wait until I'm done. So like for the most part, questions at the end. But if while I'm doing the demo, people have a question, just read it right out and I can deal with it right then and there.
I will do that. So I'll tell people to shoot their questions as we're going, and I'll check for them, and if
you'll decide what's relevant to ask right away kind of thing.
Right. Okay. How are you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
So it was interesting to see that Grinspoon is engaging in another.
I know they did this whole study, this nationwide study, and the outcome of the study was that communities do better with incentive money, and communities do better when they have a coordinator. Otherwise, after year 5, there's no money to pay for a coordinator. So there's not a staff person. So no one's checking up on you, and it kind of fizzles. And so those are 2 things that they wanted to ensure would stick around. And so, yeah, it's kind of similar funding, I think, to the first 4 years, which is great.
Yeah, that's very nice. I agree completely. I think that having a sense of belonging, in the community and also somebody keeping track of all that stuff. We keep track of it, but so will you continue to do this for Jewish for Good?
Yep.
That's good. All
yep.
Right.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. And the other thing is I have to thank you, because I know you introduced Sarah to Spirits.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I
now
saw she was just in Chicago.
Yeah, she's graduating in May. And honestly,
awesome.
if you, Grace, if you hadn't introduced her to that,
I know
she would have all the things she has now.
I know. I'm so glad she did it. It was I loved doing it. I'm still in touch with my cohort, and it was such a fun program.
Yeah.
I'm glad she got to go out to Chicago for a weekend, because I got to do that every 3 months when I was in it.
Well,
and it was
she went in the fall. She went in, this year was the first year that she got to be with the group.
Okay.
So at least she went in this fall, and she went now. But I don't think she's going to go back for graduation. I think it's like, to go for the weekend, it's a big expense. And I think we're going to do something here to
I didn't even go to my graduation because Rena was born right when I was graduating.
Okay,
And so I don't think I went. No, I didn't go either.
that was a good reason.
Yes. Someone's in the waiting room, but I'll wait until.
Yeah, it's just easier to get more people at one time.
Yep.
I'm gonna put another book under my laptop and get a better angle. This is when all my cookbooks become really useful. I've even joked with some of my friends that I use their cookbooks. I once took a picture of all the books, and like Michael Solomonov was like very touched that I used his cookbook as like he said, "I'm so glad people are getting multiple uses out of it."
Norma, do you have an Instant Pot?
No,
I don't either.
Oh my God, I love it. I did a cooking class about last year for a bunch of women that were like literally in their late 60s, early 70s who love it. Like I don't even make soup any other way but in my Instant Pot.
oh, really?
It just comes out more flavor. It's so good. It's just so good.
Well, I was thinking of buying one, and then I was thinking, it's like I have a crock pot and I never use the crock pot.
Oh, and see,
Right.
I use mine all the time. I do.
But this is better because you can saute in it. You
I
can
know.
brown things.
Where
That's
I have to saute and get a pan dirty, then I move it into the crock pot, and it's
I
two
hate
things
washing
to
dishes.
clean.
I always like it to be easy. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, for my kids are in their 20s, like they live in one has has a house with a big kitchen, but otherwise they're in small apartments. So like you have an Instant Pot, it replaces so many other pots and pans. You don't have to have so many big pots.
Mhm.
I am open, Paula. I'm open to learn
Me
about
too.
new things and to see if it could work for me, believe me.
Yeah, no, it's
My
for me.
life
I
is
mean,
not the way, I'm not working anymore, so this, I know how people use their crock pot to put stuff up and then they come back at the end of the day and whatever, but I know people who love their Instapot.
but yeah, so it requires less planning, right? So like you can walk in the house at 5 and like, oh, what do I have? I'll throw this, and then put something together, as opposed to, oh, I wanted to cook this. It's not going to get moist in time. Like you can 35 minutes, like meat is falling off the bone. Chicken stew is really soft.
I'm gonna start letting people in because it's 1.
Go ahead. And you can start like, 5 minutes out or whatever you want to start, which is, typical Jewish time. Oh, hi, Jane. I have a friend who lives in Durham area, and I was really hoping to come and see her. So hopefully another time, and then we can like cook or bake in person.
And it's a beautiful day out.
I'm out.
Here it's cold. It's very cold. It's like in the 40s today. We had nice weather, and now it just kind of tanked. So whatever.
Well, here it's in the high 30s, but it's sunny.
It cooled down here, yeah, but it's still nice.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's in the 50s. I was just outside. It was 52 degrees.
Really?
It's
And I
clo-
have a coat on.
it's closer to 60 where I'm walking.
Paula, where are you, up in the New York area?
I'm in Maryland, just outside DC in Chevy
Okay.
Chase.
Okay. Hi, Nora.
Hi, Jane. We're coming toward the end.
Last
Who is
day.
introducing the speaker tonight?
Meg Anderson,
Oh, very nice.
and I'm introducing Mark at 4:00.
Very nice.
Did you get the email that I sent?
The thank you mean?
I sent everybody an email about, well, a lot of people, an email about today's events.
Oh, I did get that. Yes. Yeah. That we, people. You have an Instant Pot, Jane?
I don't have an Instant Pot.
Well, maybe after Paula's, somebody will buy it for you for Mother's Day.
I could hint broadly.
Wait, well, you should have Richard on this call. Doesn't he do all the cooking?
No, he used to do all the cooking, but I thought that, number one, it was sexist for him to do all the cooking, and two, we split a half. It's every other night. So, but yes, we should have a one pot. We should have a one pot crock pot. My daughter has a rice cooker.
Well,
which
I will
she-
talk about this, but I use this
Okay.
to make, I finally perfected rice in the Instant Pot. Could never get
Ah.
it right on the stovetop. Always get it right. It's okay. So it's kind of
I'm
does a
afraid
lot
of-
of things.
I'm afraid of the Instant Pot. I have one sitting on the table. I got a friend to finish putting it together for me, and I've been afraid to use it.
Oh
It's
no,
been
that's
sitting
the whole
there for a
point of
couple
it.
of months.
But the old-fashioned pressure cookers on the stovetop were actually dangerous, but these are not. It's like it's like all inside one device.
Yes.
And
I know
yeah.
theoretically, somehow, some things, a lot of things do not frighten me, but for some reason, this
All right.
pot
Well, I
does.
will
My mother-
show you. I will show
Oh,
you.
Rhoda, this program is for you. Maybe you should
Okay.
find a place to sit down so you could watch the program.
Oh, I
while
can.
she-
I can sit. I'm actually over behind, which church is this? This is Watt Street. I just
Okay.
walked around it. I was going to head back to the house. But I will be getting back to the house. I just was trying to give the dog a walk, and I thought I would at least get to the beginning. I've been coming in late, and I didn't want to keep doing that.
Well, you don't want to miss, if you've got an Instapot in your house, you don't want to miss one word of Paula's presentation.
One word. Okay. Well,
It's
there's
being
another-
recorded. It is being recorded, so you can watch it again.
Believe me, if it tells you how to do it, I will watch it again because it's a question of the mechanics. It's not the cooking, it's the pots.
No, I
Anything
will explain it.
electronic- Anything
I'm-
electronic is not my friend.
You know, like everything in life, you do it one time and you're an expert. So,
Yeah.
you know,
About 10 times.
Right now, I've let in everyone who's in the waiting room, and
Okay.
so
Great.
we could probably get started, and then I will just continue to let in people as they come. As they,
okay, fine.
Is there, are we recording now? Is there a particular brand of one pot that you recommend?
Okay, it's called an Instant Pot, not an
Instant
Instapot,
is-
not
Inst-
Instapot, Instant Pot. My book was done with the endorsement of the Instant Pot Brands
Pot.
company, which is owned by
Got it.
Corning. So that's the device that I know. But I know from people telling me that you can use my recipes on other brands of the Instant Pot,
Okay.
and it works too. So yeah.
Great.
No,
Okay.
why
So
don't- why don't, Jane-
I'll refer it as an Instant Pot.
Okay,
I'll be
why
quick.
don't I introduce
Yes.
Paula, and then she can start talking about
Okay.
what she came here for. So Paula Shoyer, the kosher baker, is the author of The Healthy Jewish Kitchen, The Holiday Kosher Baker, The Kosher Baker, The New Passover Menu, and the new Instant Pot Kosher Cookbook. French trained, Paula does cooking classes and talks all around the world, and over 220 virtual cooking classes to date. She's a freelance writer, cookbook editor, and consultant and brand ambassador. She's appeared on TV over 50 times, including the Food Network. And we're very, very pleased that Paula is with us today to talk about her book, about the Instant Pot Cooker, her latest one, the Kosher Cookbook for the Instant Pot.
Thank you so much, Norma, and hi everybody, and welcome. And so welcome to my virtual book tour, where I basically talk about mouth-watering recipes without actually serving them to you, unfortunately. But I will say that, as Norma mentioned, I've done over 220 virtual cooking classes over the last 2 years, and I'm not sure I could have done that in person. So, and I've gotten a chance to speak to communities all over the world because of that. So I hope, I can't wait to be back in person. I would have been so happy to come to North Carolina. Last time I was there was when I took my son on a college tour, and would love to come back. So if at some point, things continue the way they're going, I can come back in person next year, next fall, and cook or bake with all of you. That would just be my greatest joy. So before I get into my program, just a quick word about gratitude after what we have all been going through the last 2 years. I think it's important kind of at every Jewish gathering to just, kind of acknowledge gratitude for our communities, large and small. And I'm so grateful to be with your community today. gratitude for our food and ingredients, which at times were scarce and now we're getting a little more expensive. I'm now, because of the challenges of getting ingredients 2 years ago, I will forever be grateful for everything that comes into my kitchen, and just grateful for family and friends, and most of all right now, good health. So welcome everyone. Now, I was a bit late to the Instant Pot craze. I resisted getting it for so long because my kosher kitchen is so full of stuff. And really, did I need to buy yet another piece of equipment that takes up a pretty decent amount of real estate in my kitchen? So, but I resisted it, but then so many fans of my other cookbooks kept asking me for Instant Pot recipes. So finally, I got one, and I made 3 things. I made like short ribs, and it was like falling off the bone, so moist, in 35 minutes. I made split pea soup, which like takes quite a while, and it was done in no time. And I made perfect rice for the first time. I can make puff pastry, but for some reason rice eludes me. And I thought that was great. And then somebody told me that there was a Facebook group for Instant Pot users, kosher Instant Pot users. So I went on this Facebook group. There were 8,700 members, and I would scroll through and get recipe links and learn more about how to use the device and just get a lot of tips. But what I also noticed were a lot of kvetching. People were kvetching that others were posting in the group, recipes that were in kosher, they still had to adapt them. So I realized after spending an hour scrolling through that this community needed a cookbook. And so I decided after using it 3 times that I would write this cookbook. And now this Facebook group has, I don't know, way over 15,000 members. So I always joke that sometimes you have to fake it until you make it. And with the Instant Pot, I went from 0 to expert in no time. So I promise you can too, okay? Even Rhoda, I promise you can go from 0 to hero using this device. Now, what I liked about it from the beginning was that it was very clear that it's great for making kind of so many of the Jewish recipes that we love, right? We love chicken soup. My Instant Pot chicken soup has such deep flavor. And after it's finished cooking, it automatically goes to warm. So I can put my chicken soup up on the stove and leave the house, go for a walk, go shopping, come back, and it's all safe. It's all in the device. Brisket comes out super moist in it. It's fabulous. I make a kasha in it, stuffed cabbage. I make my grandmother's stuffed cabbage in it, and chicken shawarma. I can go on. And, I did a lot of Ashkenazi and Sephardi recipes, and also some trendy ones. I did some vegan recipes. I have a zucchini rolls with cashew cheese. I have a quinoa and beet salad that's very popular, Indian recipes, Korean recipes, like something for everybody. And basically what I did for this cookbook, like I did for my other 5, was like I kind of create a bridge between like the past and present through the recipes I create. Now, I wasn't planning to do a demo today, but since my husband and I, we have to eat anyway, I decided I'm going to show you how to make a recipe that's actually not in the book. It's on my website, thekosherbaker.com, and it's a new recipe. And what I love about this recipe, and I think Grace would appreciate this too, it's like for kids, it's a meal in a bowl. So it's vegetables, pasta, and beans, like all in one plate. So I'm going to tilt my screen so you watch me, and I'm just going to just quickly show you a little bit about how it works. So here's my device, and this is the thing I wanted to show everybody right away is there's a lot of buttons here, okay? I don't even use half of them. I use saute, which I'm pushing now. That means it's going to heat up the bottom so I can saute my vegetables for the soup. I use pressure cook, which we're going to use shortly. I use warm. I use the rice setting, and that's kind of it. Like I don't really use all these buttons. It shouldn't scare you. So now I've turned it on. And you know how when you heat up oil on the stovetop to cook something, you're always wondering, is it hot enough? Like you'll put your hand over the pan. Is the oil too hot? Is it not hot enough? Is it, is it ready yet? But what's really cool is when this gets hot, it's actually going to say hot on it. It's really quite something. Like it's going to tell you that it's ready. So once it's ready, I'm going to put in some oil, and I already chopped up like carrots and celery, onions, leeks, and I chopped up quite a bit of garlic into really small pieces, but I divided it in half. And this is like a great general tip for any of you who like to make soups and stews. So this is my tiny chopped up garlic, and half of it is going into the pot with all the vegetables. The other half of my chopped garlic, I'm actually going to add later after the soup cooks, and it gives it a big pop of flavor at the end. I'm a big fan with any kind of vegetable soup of throwing in some crushed garlic at the very end of cooking and let it just kind of warm in the recipe, and you get a really strong kind of garlic flavor in there. So this should be ready in a moment. And you know, some of the ingredients.
Paula, I just want
Yes.
to let everybody know, as you're speaking, if anyone has questions, they could put them in the chat. I'm reviewing that and I'll be happy to share them with you.
So the soup, you know, I'm a big fan of kind of cleaning out my refrigerator by like throwing soups together, and which I just had for lunch before this Zoom. I had found a bunch of vegetables and I found a small little bag of yellow split peas. You know, Passover is coming up in 3 weeks. So I went into my pantry last week and I started kind of clearing out little amounts of things. I made a cookie from the Holiday Kosher Baker cookbook where I could use the bottom of the bags of like the raisins, the cranberries, the apricots, and the nuts, just throw them all in. So when you're planning meals for like the next 2 weeks, go into your pantry and fridge and like see what you can get rid of before the holiday. All right, I'm still waiting for this to turn hot, so I'm just gonna keep talking and then I'll show it to you when it's ready. It should be ready soon. My husband just walked in the kitchen to take a piece of this cookie where I threw everything in. I'll show you a piece of it later, it's kind of cool. Okay, so every one of us has a food story to tell, and we have to be deliberate about sharing it with the next generation and with all the people we love. And we do that through the food we serve at our tables. So when I was 12 years old, I used to sit in my grandmother's kitchen in Brooklyn and I would watch her measure cake ingredients with her hands. And my mother only baked once a year with those Manischewitz cake mixes on Passover. So going to grandma's house was like magical, right? Because she would transform all these wonderful ingredients into the most, you know, delicious baked goods. All right, I'm going to pause here because I'm going to show you guys what's going on. So can you see this, that it says hot? It just says hot, right? Wouldn't it be nice if our stovetop tells us? So I'm literally going to put in 3 tablespoons of oil. I'm using olive oil, and I keep my olive oil in a squirt bottle. Why? Because it makes it really easy to just measure instead of taking out a big bottle every time. And I'm going to take all these vegetables. You can kind of hear the sizzle, and I'm just going to throw these in here, and we're going to cook these up just like you would do on the stovetop. Now, this is a 6-quart model, which I think is as big as anyone needs. I do have the 8-quart as well, which I pretty much use like, I don't know, basically just to make chicken soup and stock. All right, so we're going to let this sit for a minute, and I'll keep talking. I'm going to keep an eye on this. So, and I love to bake my whole life. Like I literally had an easy bake oven when I was 5. I used to have parties for friends in high school and college and law school, but I never imagined that like food was an actual career. I grew up in Long Island in the 70s, early 80s, where I was kind of pushed to be a doctor or a lawyer, an accountant or a teacher. Nobody said, oh, what do you love to do? What's your passion? Why don't we turn that into a career? That just wasn't happening back in the day. Of course, it's a different world, you know, for my 4 children. I'm going to stir this every once in a while. Okay. So I went to college pre-med at Brandeis University, and I ended up in law school after a really bad day in the chemistry lab when everything went wrong, and I took it as a sign from God that I had another destiny. So I went to law school, practiced law in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, and then my husband's work for the U.S. government sent us to Geneva, Switzerland, and we lived there as diplomats. And I had a job for a Jewish organization dealing with the treatment of Israel at the UN. I was a speechwriter, and that was great. When my daughter Emily was born, I decided to leave that job. It wasn't so family friendly. And then I decided I'm going to go to cooking school in Paris. I decided to go for fun. I was not planning a new career, just thought I'd learn how to bake better. I did pastry because of kashrut. I figured that would be easier for me. And I did this program. I brought my daughter with me. She was about, I think the first class, she was maybe like 10, no, maybe she was like 13 or 15 months at the time. She ended up being at like over 95th percentile in weight, because every morning before class, I would take her around to pastry shops in Paris, and my friend would watch her in the afternoon. And then every night I would come back from cooking school with 5 cake boxes. So this baby would be like, cake. The pediatrician didn't understand what was going on, but she was a little bit worried. But now she's tall and skinny and it's all good, but she was quite huge for a time. So I was living in Switzerland. I would come back from these classes and people would ask me to bake for them for events. So I started catering. And then one day, one of the women from synagogue asked me to teach a cooking class for the Witzo women's group. So I taught a cooking class in my apartment in Geneva in French, definitely more comedy than instruction, but it was fun. And that started my love of teaching. I came back to the United States with 2 kids in tow. I had Sam 20 months after Emily, but those were the easy days because I ended up having twins kind of 2 years later after I came back, and ended up with 4 kids under the age of 5. Don't really remember those first 2 years of the twins' life, but I do have evidence in photography and video. But now they're between 22 and 27. So anyway, all wonderful people and all really good cooks. All right, I'm going to go back to this for a second so we can keep moving on our recipe. So I'm going to tilt this so you guys can see this. So it's just basically we're sauteing like we would do on a stovetop, okay? So this has been a couple of minutes. Usually I do it for about 5 until the onions are clear. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and add is I have a kind of a bunch of like a little bowl with spices here. I've got a little bit of red pepper flakes, salt and pepper, oregano, and dried oregano and dried rosemary. I'm just going to go ahead and like throw that in here, and I'll cook that for like another minute and stir it. And you should know, like the outside of this is like just a little bit warm. Even this is not super hot. So it just feels a lot safer than when I'm on a stovetop. And I try not to use it underneath like my shelves in my kitchen because I don't want to, have steam all over them. So I'm going to cook this up for about a minute, and then I'm going to get ready to add my oil. So after I came back from Europe, another cookbook author, Susie Fishbein, asked me to edit 2 of her cookbooks. And I tested all the recipes and edited all the recipes and edited them. And I realized halfway through the first book, why did I write my own book? I had all these recipes from cooking school in Paris, all these pastry recipes. I had taken all this French pastry that was dairy and converted it into kosher parm dairy-free recipes to have on my Shabbat table. So I had invented lots of recipes, and I had started teaching cooking classes just around this island right here, which was just a lot of fun because it was a good kind of flexible thing to do with small children in my house. All right, so now that our spices are done here, the next step is I'm going to take my water and I'm going to add it in. This is a really important step because we want to make sure before we cook up our soup that nothing is sticking to the bottom. And just so you know, this recipe, pasta fagioli soup, it's a pasta and bean soup, is on the kosherbaker.com website. You just have to click on recipes and you're good to go. So I'm just taking a wooden spoon and I'm just like scraping the bottom just to make sure that, that nothing is stuck on the bottom here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and press cancel, and I'm going to get ready to put my other ingredients in to cook. So I'm going to I have 2 kinds of beans here. I'm using cannellini beans and some and red kidney beans, which are super, super healthy. But sometimes if I only have one kind, that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my beans in the pot. And I'm also going to throw in pasta. I'm using orecchiette pasta, the one that looks like little ears. And I'm just going to throw that in here as well. And I'm going to mix these up. And I will bring this over so you can kind of see inside. See, that's what it looks like there. I'm also going to throw in something that the Italian women love to put into their soups. It's like, you know how you get to the bottom of the Parmesan cheese and you got this little chunk? I'm literally throwing it into the pot, okay? So I've thrown that in the pot there. And the next thing we're going to do, yes?
What? You throw a little hunk of Parmesan cheese into
Yeah, it just adds a little bit, adds some more flavor to it. Now, so I typically use chopped tomatoes for this recipe, but I did not have any. So I'm doing an experiment right now with you guys, okay? Welcome to my world. And I'm going to put in like crushed tomatoes instead. Now, this is really important. For whatever reason, the bottom of the Instant Pot doesn't like tomato. It just doesn't. You sometimes get a burn notice if you mix up the tomatoes into it. So all I'm going to do here is I'm literally going to pour this on top, and I'm just not even going to mix it. So I'm just adding my kind of crushed tomatoes without getting it on myself. I'm just squeezing it in. There we go. A little more at the bottom. I like this box, but it's hard to get it out. All right, that's enough here. And now I'm just literally, I just want to show you, I'm just letting it sit on top. Okay, I'm not mixing it in at all. So let me show you how the top works. So here's my top. It's got like a rubber gasket. It has to be underneath this metal thing. So literally, I'm going to take the top, line it up here, and then I lock it. So now it's locked. I can't. This is open and this is shut. So I've locked it. Now I want to bring this closer so you kind of see this. I've got this little vent here and it says venting or sealing, and I'm going to turn it to sealing. Okay, so now it's kind of locked in. And then all I need to do here is I'm going to push pressure cook. Oh, it's already on 7 minutes. There you go. And I'm going to cook it for 7 minutes. Okay. Now, the important thing to know about the Instant Pot is that the 7 minutes is not the entire. So now it's kind of heating up. And then once it's ready to go, it's going to start at 7 and it's going to count down to 0. I always keep the keep warm button on. So as soon as it counts down to 0, it starts going up. And then I'll explain in a little bit how we release the pressure of this. Okay. So all I did was push pressure cook. You go plus and minus to get to the number you want. And then you don't have to push start on this model. It just goes. Now, I wrote the cookbook such that every recipe tells you what buttons to push. You don't have to wonder. Like, it literally will say, press this button and then go to the next step. All right, so we're going to let that go over there. So I decided to write a cookbook, but guess what? Nobody wanted to publish my first cookbook, The Kosher Baker. Every publisher said no. Like J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, every publisher said no. But then Brandeis University has a press, and I pitched my book to them, and they agreed to publish this cookbook. And it was just an amazing experience after this book came out, which is like all dairy-free recipes, all parve, and it's organized by time. So the first third of the book are 1 bowl recipes that take like 15 minutes or less. Second part of the book are 15 to 30 2-step recipes. And the third part are recipes that have more steps. Because honestly, when we decide to bake, the first thing we think about is it Tuesday night and I'm baking for Friday, or is it Friday at 2 or Friday at 3 even? Like, you're making different recipes. And then based on this book, I came out with the Holiday Kosher Baker, which has 45 Passover recipes, including 37 gluten-free. Then this is the one that's like most relevant now, the new Passover menu after that. And then I came out with the healthy cookbook, which I always joke is like, this is how you eat so you always have room for dessert. So that's my story there. Okay, so back to my own.
We have a question, and I put in the answer. The recipe for this soup is on your website, The Kosher Baker. Is that correct?
.com, thekosherbaker.com. Yeah. So
I wrote that in the chat.
Yeah, it's one that I created maybe about 6 months ago. I think I make it every other week. I made it. My kids love it. It's like the most satisfying recipe. And since the weather, we're not dealing, I'll probably still make it in the 70s when it's in the 70s and 80s, because it's just like a whole meal in a bowl. It's a great thing to make early in the week because then you have it like the whole rest of the week. All right.
Are your cookbooks on your website to buy, or?
Well, if people want to, okay. So I know, is somebody selling books through the synagogue?
We have 2 independent bookstores here, Flyleaf and the Regulator.
So please support your local bookstores if they have any of my 5 books. If you cannot find them, you can message me through obviously you can always buy them on Amazon. You get the best price and have it the next day. But if you want a signed book from me and support an author, because we make so little money off Amazon, that's why I say please support independent bookstores, please. Sure. You can message me through the contact page on the website, and I take payment lots of different ways, and I mail it. I'm not at the post office all the time. But if anybody wants like Passover books, like I'm happy to get those out really quickly. But I have Passover friendly books in almost most all of the books, but because I tend to be somebody who eats a lot of kind of natural food anyway. So all that stuff, all the vegetables, it's all Passover anyway. All right. So getting back to my food story. So about 35 years after I'm in my grandmother's kitchen, watching her bake, I was doing cooking events, not virtual, obviously, but in person. Went all over the United States, Canada. I even got to Hong Kong, China to do a cooking demo for the community there. Just been really blessed, and to meet so many wonderful people and communities and collect lots of stories all around. But often I get to go places because somebody recommends me. And I did a lot of events for Chabad Lubavitch in the beginning, and they would recommend me to all of their relatives, which was great. It was like an employment agency, because each woman I did an event for in one city had like 14 sisters and sisters-in-law. So I could like do events through entire branches of families. So one day I get an email from a woman in Brooklyn asking me if I would come and do a cooking class, like a whole meal in their rabbi's home. I see where this email is from. I call the woman up on the phone and she says, oh, we heard about you on the network. We'd love to have you come and do a class for our women. Our rabbi has a wonderful kitchen. So I say to her, is your rabbi's kitchen located is your rabbi's house at 3844 Lime Avenue in Seagate, Brooklyn? And the shocked woman says to me, how do you know the address of my rabbi's house? So I tell her that that was my grandparents' former house.
Oh my God.
And I do a cooking class in that same kitchen where I used to sit with my grandmother. And in grandma's day, it was very 1970s pink, like fuchsia pink and marigold yellow. It was now like neutral and tasteful. But my mother, my aunt, my father, and my daughter were all there. And, you know, when I got up to speak, I thought I would be a little bit anxious because my grandmother was already gone. Grandma had lived to age 98 on a steady diet of sponge cake and sanka. And I thought I'd be sad, but I felt so at peace when I stood there because I was holding this book in my hands and I felt like this is what I was meant to be doing. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And it was just such a remarkable experience. And then 3 years ago, I'm doing a cooking class for a synagogue in Queens in New York. And I'm telling the story. And every time I tell the story, nobody asks questions in the middle of my story because they want to know. They're like, I'm building up this whole drama. But this woman interrupts me in the middle of my story. And she says, what's your mother's maiden name? So I said, Toby Altman. And she says, I knew your mother. I knew her two sisters too. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, you know, like just completely overwhelmed that this happened to me. So yeah, that's the small world we live in. What can I tell you? But every one of you has their own food story to tell, right? So it's meals you had in like a mother's, an aunt's, a grandparent's home. It's meals you ate on vacation, places you've traveled to that were particularly memorable. It could be the first meals you cooked in your own house or your own apartment off campus, or when you got married, or when you had kids, or when you were on your own, when you got divorced, like different stages of life. Like we have all these different food memories, and that's kind of what we collect throughout our lives, because food can really take us back to those people and back to those places, which is just really extraordinary. And it's such an easy, for me, it's been such a magical way to connect with people who are gone. And I have so many of my grandmother's recipes in all of my cookbooks. So like every time I take a bite of a chocolate cake that has a really thick like chocolate frosting on top, I'm always going to think of my late mother, who used to hide an Entenmann's chocolate fudge cake in her bedroom closet. Now, there was one in the kitchen for my brothers and myself, but she had her own cake, And every time, like this Friday, when I was cleaning out my refrigerator and creating a soup, it's always going to remind me how when my father was declining in health before his death, I was trying to get calories in him. So I would make him these pureed soups, and I would take all the vegetables that I had, and there were vegetables he hated, like spinach. I would throw them in the soup because they were good for him. And then I would throw beans in the soup, which he hated even more. And I would puree the whole thing, and he would just love it. Like I never would even tell him what was in it. It was like green soup or orange soup, and he would just eat it all. But when I do these kinds of soups, it takes me back to that time when I was helping take care of him. So, all of these different food memories that we have, like just means so very much to us. So what I like to tell people is like when you're planning a meal, it could be a Shabbat meal, a dinner, a holiday special occasion. Like think about not just what are the most trendy recipes are, what these current food trends are. Like think about bringing your kind of experience to the table. So like just like we like to have younger people and older people at our meals and at our table, I suggest having older recipes and younger recipes. So pick a recipe from your past or that tells a story of an important time in your life and make that recipe and share that with whoever's at your table, your friends, your family. And if it's just you, like you get to relish that memory and enjoy it yourself. But then combine that with a new recipe from me that you found in one of my books or one of my other recipes online and bring something new to the table. And I think it's such a wonderful way to kind of honor the past enjoy something in the present, and then look towards the future, creating like new customs and new trends for your own family. And this is really important. So like if you're an older person and you have great recipes, like make sure you write them down to share them with the younger generation. And if you're the younger generation, please ask the older generation for their recipes, because sometimes they're just in people's heads. And when they give you this recipe, make sure you make the recipe while they are still alive. Because some of my grandmother's recipes, I got scribbles of, somebody found like among her papers after she passed. And then I would make the recipe. I'm like, I can't read this word. I don't know what this word is. And I made it and didn't quite taste like hers. But if she was there, I could have asked her. So please, please, like go out of your way to kind of honor those people in your life who made these wonderful recipes. And you know, I know it's challenging sometimes because so many recipes in our tradition, more Ashkenazi than Sephardi, are just a little on the heavier side. And I really feel like it's like a challenge for me when I go out and speak to so many groups, because people want the recipes that they love that remind them, right, of their family and how they ate growing up. But then we know so much more about nutrition today. You have some young mothers of kids. We have one on the call. So who are like, no, my kids are not having any sugar before age X, and we're not giving them this, and we're not giving them that. But then you have people in our community who are on the other side of the spectrum. And I know this because one of my little side hustles is I edit family cookbooks for people. So people collect recipes and I help them I write them in a way that like people will be able to understand them forever. It's not just the way we describe something now. I just try to make it very clear. So I see what people are eating in their families, and it is shocking. I see people who have salad dressings with a half a cup of sugar in them. Kid you not. I've edited books where every single meat recipe, whether it's a brisket or any kind of a roast, has like a half a cup of brown sugar in it, and ketchup, and like all these jarred sauces in it. So, or even desserts that are literally made of vanilla pudding mix, rich whipping cream, and margarine. Like, I'm not even kidding. And I try to tell people, like, you know, I could help you. I could take these recipes and give you new strategies for making them healthier. And they're like, oh no, we love this recipe. So it's like, you know, it's people who really believe that kugel is a vegetable. And I know there are kugel lovers out there. I once got stampeded by a group of women in Toledo, Ohio, because I criticized kugel, and they wanted my head on a platter. Like, they had each person in their community. Oh, this woman, she's the sweet kugel lady, and that woman, she makes the best potato, and this one makes a broccoli. And I'm like, listen, I understand, but you can't serve kugel every Friday night and then wonder why you're overweight. Like, this is not any great mystery of life, you know? So what I've been trying to do as I address groups is like try to move people in a healthier direction. And shameless plug for Healthy Jewish Kitchen, which I should tell you is my least selling cookbook. Okay, please. And it's been so frustrating for me because it's delicious. I cook from this book all the time. Okay. And this book is always going to be special to me because I was approached by my publisher to write this book, I don't know, maybe 5 weeks after my mother passed away. And my mother passed after a 12-week battle with lung cancer. So I was basically sitting on that sofa every night after Minyan with my two new best friends, Ben and Jerry, eating my feelings and feeling just sorry for myself. And then I was asked to write this book, and I was like, all right, well, I can't stay on the sofa forever, right? I need to do something. So I agreed to write the book. And I got rid of all the ingredients that I had relied on for years. No soup stocks from a box or powder, no sauces from a jar, no puff pastry, no phyllo dough, none of that, all natural ingredients. And you know what? The food was delicious, and I lost all of that grieving weight, and I felt purpose and hope. So this book like totally brought me back to life. So I keep trying to make inroads in our community. I'm doing the best that I can. Like I said, it's like my approach isn't all or nothing. I eat desserts. I'm in shape because I exercise like every day, and I balance out my cookies and babka with lots of salads and lots of fresh soups, and, you know, trying to find kind of that elusive balance so that I can enjoy my challah every Shabbat, but still fit into my jeans 2 days later. So, and you know, I always tell people, like, you can take any baked good recipe and substitute a quarter or a third of the white flour with whole wheat flour without changing anything else. When I make recipes for my Kosher Baker cookbook now, I mean, that book was written 12, 14 years ago, I literally scoop out a tablespoon of sugar from every recipe. I literally reduce sugar in all, even most of my books now. And you know what? It still comes out great. I made my brownies last week, took out 2 tablespoons of sugar, and they were fabulous. So it's like I'm kind of still like always moving in that direction. And you know, there's no guarantee that eating healthier like is going to help us all live longer, but I want to have energy for like my family and the things I want to do today. And so that's kind of why I've done that. Okay, so just to show you this here. So now it's on 7. So as you can see, it took time for it to come to pressure. This was the thing, and we're going to get into the Instant Pot in a second. The thing that pissed me off so much about recipes for the Instant Pot was people say, oh, it takes 5 minutes to make that soup. I'm like, okay, well, you put it all in the pot and then the pot has to come to pressure, and that took 10 minutes. Well, that wasn't 5 minutes, that was 15. That's still faster than the 45 that I normally would have spent, but I want to know what I'm dealing with here. So in the cookbook, in the Instant Pot Kosher cookbook, every recipe tells you like how much time it takes to prep it, how much time it takes to come to pressure, so you can plan, okay? We're all busy. We have people pulling us in every direction, and I think I just wanted to give people, kind of empower people with that, you know, with that direction. And yeah, this is the first time I've done like a kind of device-driven book, and I love these recipes, and I make them all the time. And you know, I feel like even though this is like such a modern device that we're using, like Jewish people have, you know, as immigrants, we've had to adapt our recipes to new equipment, you know, for generations. Every time you had a group of immigrants who are coming from one place to the next, they didn't always leave with all their kitchen tools and all their recipes. They were often in their head, and they had to kind of adapt, you know, come to America and figure out how to make their favorite dishes without the certain pot or the certain kind of oven that they used back in the old country. And I've been thinking about this recently, that like you have all these like millions of Ukrainian refugees now going off to different countries. I don't imagine when all these people were running for their lives, they took the folder that has all their family recipes kind of written out, or that recipe box, or any of their cookbooks. They just picked up what was essential and they got out of there. So I always think about like getting things up in a cloud, getting things online, sending recipes to people so that the ones that are dear to you don't get lost anywhere. And, you know, I always say that like cookbooks, Jewish cookbooks, like tell our stories, and they tell us kind of what we were eating and what we were doing over like the last 100 years. And I know that each of you can picture that cookbook shelf in the house you grew up in. What were the books that were there, and the ones that you have and love on your shelf today. And you know, what's interesting is today we have this whole social media world, right? So like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok are now kind of our kind of cookbooks in a way, but it's another way of like us accessing so many recipes. But what I love about the social media world is that I call it the modern day coffee clutch, right? So you remember how people would get together, they'd be playing mahjong, and they'd be hanging out or walking their kids to the park together, and they'd be talking about recipes. Well, now we do that online. So it's like not such a strange thing, and it's been a lot of fun for me. I have a Facebook group called Kosher Baker that anybody can join, and people post their recipes. And I literally just started doing TikTok about, I don't know, about 7, 8 weeks ago already. And it's been a lot of fun, I have to say. I'm on TikTok as at Chef Paula Shoyer. So if you or kids or grandkids are on TikTok, please send them my way. I'm not doing dances unless I get really excited about something I'm eating. I'm typically just teaching people to cook and teaching them, you know, all different recipes. So, all right. So unlike the pressure cookers of old, the Instant Pot is like a safer pressure cooker, okay? So like it's just sitting here quietly doing its thing, right? I can just completely ignore it. And soon I'm gonna show you how to release the pressure, and we'll do the second part of the recipe. And why should you get one of these devices? I will tell you that, like for my kids in their 20s, it replaces so many different pots and pans. They don't have, so if you have kids or grandkids who are like living off campus or in apartments, small apartments, whether they're in Atlanta or New York or Chicago, like they're gonna want one of these because I make all of my soups in it. These kids are busy, right? Like whether some are working virtually, some are working in the office. You can come home from the office, throw in your ingredients, and you can have like your whole meal made in no time, you know? And my 4 kids all have them, and they really love them. It takes less energy and it uses less water to cook, which is really great for our world, okay? It's easier cleanup because everything is inside one pot. I make a spaghetti bolognese where I saute onions and meat. I use 2 kinds of meat in it, and then I add my tomato sauce. I moisten spaghetti under the faucet and drop the broken spaghetti on top and put in a jar of sauce and a jar of water. I cover it. 15 minutes later, my pasta's cooked, my sauce is cooked. I toss it together and my meal is done. I have one thing to wash, no pot for the sauce, no colander for the pasta, no pot for this pasta, just one thing. So I'm a big fan of that. It also doesn't heat up or smell up your kitchen. So if you're in a small space, it's really nice to your neighbors that you're not cooking Indian food and it's like wafting down the hallways. So it's so I think that's great. Also in the summertime, like you guys are in a hot climate. So like if you have a small kitchen and it gets stuffy, like this device is not going to heat up your kitchen, which is really great. It's really useful when you've got every burner going for a Jewish holiday and now you have another place to cook something else, which is great. And what's also cool about it, you can put frozen meat or chicken in it. So I take boneless chicken out of the freezer and throw it in with some water. And in like 10 minutes, I can make chicken that I can shred and put into a salad. I have a recipe for a chicken salad with a Japanese ginger dressing in the book that I really like. And so I love that you can put frozen things because sometimes we forget to defrost things, right? And you can just like throw things in it. And I have on my website a blog posting where it tells you like if you have recipes that you love and you want to adapt it for the Instant Pot, how do you do that? It's like if your soup has beans in it, it takes this amount of time. If your meat is this kind of meat, it takes that amount of time. So it's been like a very good resource for that. And my favorite thing about the device, I will say, is I could just walk away right now. I could go anywhere. I could take a walk. You can go like play with your baby. You can take the dog for a walk. You can knit. You can just take a nap. It's just going to go to warm and you can just ignore it. And I love that. I can just not worry about it, especially with soups. The longer they sit, the better. Now, our pot has pasta in it, so we don't want to let this cook. And in a minute, it's going to beep and go off. And I'm going to show you how we release the pressure and move on to the next step of the recipe. I also make, one of my favorite things to make is I make a vegan lentil stew where the stew's at the bottom. Oh, it's beeping. I'm going to show you that in a second. The stew's at the bottom, and I put this rack, comes with the pot, on top of the stew. And then on top of that, I have like a small pan that fits in the pot. I have water and rice. I put this on top of the rack like this. So I've got water and rice in this. It's on top of my stew. And it cooks together. So when I open up the top, I have my rice and my lentils all ready to go. And I have a whole meal like in one step. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys. I'll show you some more toys in a second. I'm going to move this over here. Okay, so remember we turned our device to sealing. Now when that happens, here, I want to show you guys this. Do you see there's like a little silver button on top? Can you see the silver thing? Yeah, so that came up. And that shows that it's come to pressure. So now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to use my hand. I'm going to turn this, and it's going to release the pressure. Now, you don't want it to go up to the light fixtures or the shelves in your. So once this is called the quick release, which means you turn the lever to venting and it vents. And once the pressure goes down, the button's going to go down and you'll be able to open up the top. A kind of manual release is when after the cooking time is released, you see it has like an L here. It's going to start counting up. It's on warm. You could just ignore it and this pressure will slowly come down. We're doing a quick release so that we can add I'm going to add some spinach to it. Normally I put kale in it. So I'll get to that part in a second. I make chillins in it. I make brisket in this all the time. I cut the meat in pieces and just kind of stack it on top, which is great. I make chicken wings in it. Okay, so if you guys are into sports and you need great chicken wings for game day, I have that rack that I showed you, water at the bottom, raw chicken wings on top. I steam them pretty quickly, and then I dump them on a baking pan, and I put jarred barbecue sauce and everything bagel spice, and I broil them for 5 minutes each side. So the inside of the wings are so moist, and then the outside is super crispy. This was like a revelation. I love how these come out. I also do, because I'm the kosher baker, I have a bunch of desserts I make in the Instant Pot. So any dessert that you would bake in a water bath, so flourless chocolate cake, cheesecake, flan, pot de creme, I make those in my Instant Pot. I have this is my dairy one. I have 2 meat ones. I wrote a book, so I needed all these devices. I don't have a Passover one, so I'll have to deal with that. But you just kind of put the rack over water, and you put your ramekins of flourless chocolate cake or molten cakes on top, and they just steam, and it comes out really, really wonderful. Now, oh, we're almost done here, so I'm going to turn this again. Okay, I'm going to move this much closer to us. Carefully. You don't want to ever be anywhere near where the steam is. Okay, so just like steam coming out of a pot or anywhere. It's just steam is like a hidden danger here. So once I can open it. So the next thing I'm going to do actually is I usually have kale, but today I'm using spinach. And remember, I have this like leftover garlic. So the steam is slowly coming out. It's still locked. And the saute function that I use with the vegetables is literally my favorite feature because I can brown meat, ground beef, chicken. All right, so now the pin went down. I can turn it. All right, and I can show you inside. So there is the soup, and I'm just going to stir it up a little bit. I'm going to stir it up, and I can see, you can see this, that like, my pasta is nicely al dente, but it's still soupy. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my spinach. And then the rest of this garlic, dumping that in, it's going to give it a nice little bite. So I'm going to press this all in underneath. And normally I put in basil and kind of half my basil and parsley, but I didn't. My basil had gone bad. So I chopped up parsley and some like fennel fronds. So I'm just going to put in like half of it now. And the other half I'll use to sprinkle in later. So I'm just pushing these things underneath. And I'm going to put the cover back on and let the spinach steam and the garlic steam. So spinach obviously doesn't need as much time as like kale would. And then I'll be ready to kind of serve it, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I hope you guys see like how super easy this is. But yeah, so the saute function is what, like, most crock pots don't have a saute function. I think that's a big difference from it, which is, and like I use it for like aromatics, like the onions, the carrots, and all that stuff. So with every one of my cookbook book tours, I've always had like a kind of a different kind of a tour and a kind of a theme in mind. And I kept thinking, even before this book came out, it was before COVID, like, oh, it was supposed to come out earlier than it actually did, like, oh, everybody's under pressure these days. But I realized I wrote a pressure cooker book that came out during a pandemic, okay? And what it made me realize is like, it's kind of a metaphor for how we've been living. So I want everybody here to imagine that you're a carrot being thrown into the Instant Pot under that saute setting. So like the second it hits the hot oil at the bottom of the pan, you feel like the shock of the heat. And then if that's not bad enough, next thing you know, more ingredients are being dumped on top of you and liquids coming in. So you're basically drowning. And then the top is put on, it's locked, and you're like literally trapped inside. And then the pressure builds up, and it's really intense. But because it's the Instant Pot, it's not going to cook for very long. It cooks its few minutes. The pressure either goes down naturally or it's released, kind of quickly like we just did. And finally, like somebody releases the pressure, turns it to venting, and opens up the lid, and you can plan your escape. So basically, this is how we have felt for the last 2 years, right? It's like varying degrees of pressure, right? Sometimes we're being fully cooked, and other times we have to deal with the warm setting, right? We're dealing with this like everyday worry and stress, and goes up and down. And, I feel like we're in such a good place right now that we're finally able to like lift the lid and be free. And I just hope that lasts for as long as possible. But, I keep thinking like, this is how we have felt. So a couple of things since Passover is coming. Start cleaning up your cabinets, plan meals around using things up. When you're planning your menus, try to bring in as many healthy recipes as possible as you can. We're eating matzah anyway, so it's like too much. So, think about that. I want to share with you like my best cooking tip in the world. So you can forget everything I've said, except for 2 things. 1, you should buy my cookbooks. And 2, this is the tip I'm telling you now. everybody's ovens are different, right? I have a Wolf and a GE. Some people or have like Viking, and some people have, KitchenAid. There's so many different ovens. And if you've traveled at all or cooked and baked in other people's homes, you know that sometimes things don't come out exactly the same. So this is my important tip. Anytime you make a recipe for the first time, my recipe, anyone's recipes, reduce the baking time. So if it says bake for an hour, bake it for 50. Bake it for 40, you're going to do it for 30. Cookies for 16 minutes, you're going to time 13 minutes. And you're going to check, because you can always add time and you can't take it away. So that's like my most important tip. Okay, so I'm going to finish up with a thought, and then if people have questions, we're good to go. And then I'll show everybody kind of how this looks. I'm just taking my top off here. I'm going to put some of this in a bowl in a minute. So because we're a Jewish group, I want to quickly share just kind of a quick word of Torah, which I like to do at my events. So everybody knows that story that Moses went up Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments. He comes down, he sees the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, takes those tablets, throws them down, and they break into pieces. And at some point, God forgave the Israelites. Moses went back up and got another set of tablets. Now, as the Israelites went through the desert, the whole tablets were in the portable ark. But what not everybody knows is that the broken ones were there as well. And I think it's kind of a beautiful image to think about, like, as we go through our lives, we have like the broken and the whole with us. We have our joys and our sorrows, our successes, our failures, kind of the difficult times and the joy. Like, we carry all of that with us, like everywhere we go. And we should honor all those memories. But for me, the image of like pieces of the tablets, the shards, reminded me of babka crumbs. Now, chocolate babka is like my most popular dessert. You can go on the website, the babka recipes there, babka bites. I have so many different, I've written articles rating other people's babkas for websites. I mean, babka is like my world, okay? Love chocolate babka. Now, when my mother used to come visit, she would only eat chocolate desserts. So I would make the babka. So Friday night, I'd be slicing the babka, and those like caramelized edges would like fall off, and she would collect them in a baggie. And the whole weekend, when all of us were eating like slices of babka, Mom was taking her little bag of crumbs, and she would say there were no calories in the crumbs, okay? So I kind of see that our food memories are, right, our own bag of crumbs, right? Like, they're pieces of your past manifested through food that we eat, right? So like, it's, all these different memories that we have eating with family and people we love and colleagues in our community, special celebrations and all that. And just like the broken tablets, like, our memories are savory and sweet, like some are not as happy. So I feel like, we should always think about, kind of the tradition that we're carrying forward. And honestly, what attracted me to this Instant Pot initially was the ability to make soups and stews, right? That's kind of the sweet spot of our kind of Jewish cuisine, like classic comfort food, right? And if there was ever time to eat comfort food, it's like been the last 2 years, right? Like, we need comfort food. And I'm not talking about the Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I'm talking about like nourishing food, the kind of food my grandmother cooked in that Brooklyn kitchen and that I've put into all of my books and I try to share with the world. Like, that's what I mean. But it's also the kind of food that we all should be making and sharing. So soups and stews is what we could pack up and have in our freezer. So if somebody has a shiva, you can bring it. And if somebody has a baby, you can bring them something. So it's the kind of food that like we can share. And the song that always runs through my head as I talk about my cookbook is the Freddie Mercury, David Bowie song, Under Pressure, which, if you don't know it, look it up. It's a very popular song. It's a great collaboration of two magnificent musicians. And I actually went and read the words, and the song says, like, pressure pushing down on me. And the song, they describe pressure is the terror of knowing what the world is about, watching some good friends scream, let me out. And it's like, when I heard these words, I'm like, well, this is how we have felt the last 2 years. And the song ultimately asks, like, can't we give ourselves one more chance? Why can't we give love that one more chance? And like, with an Instant Pot, fast food finally means something nourishing and comforting and positive. And we can use this device to kind of soothe each other with food. So I feel like food is what allows us to give love a chance. And I feel like that is where like the healing begins. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. And I'm going to put some of this in a bowl so everybody can take a close-up look at it.
Well, Paula, Jane asked about where the recipe was. I said it was on your website and I put it in the chat. And when you were talking about the babka, she said symbolism in babka. And that was a wonderful story. Your stories are really incredible. Here's my question. I make a lot of soup in the wintertime and I make it in one of these big soup pots, because I don't want to do it too often. So I want to put it in the freezer. So what would you use for the Instant Pot? How many containers does the 8-quart pot give you?
Okay, so just to give you an example, like this is not a huge amount of soup. Let's see, this recipe I think makes like 8 servings or so, but I will tell you that I think I have recipes with even like 10 cups of water in them. I'm just going to tell you. So like, let's see, I'm just going to find like a lot of my recipes in the book serve 10 to 12.
Mhm.
So basically like here, let me just hold it up so people have a visual, right? So let's say you go online and you buy like these containers, right?
I have
So
those.
I can usually fit kind of like almost four ladles.
Oh, okay.
It depends on your size of ladles in here. So I'll know this is going to be like, if it's just my husband and me, because we're empty nesters, we could have these like Friday night dinner, 2 of us, Shabbat lunch, we can have 2 of us. But it's nice to keep things in smaller because it's easier to defrost than like a huge container of soup. And you should always get masking tape, keep it in your kitchen with a Sharpie and just label it. But yeah, I easily get like 12 servings out of the 6-quart.
Then here, one other question. A lot of the soups call for, some kind of, not just water, but like the
The
stock.
soup stock.
So,
All right, I will tell you what my hack is for that, okay?
okay.
So, and one of the things I did during Zoom, which is why I clocked up so many cooking classes, is I did a lot of cooking classes for teenagers. So kids would all of last fall and winter and spring. I had groups of teens who were doing Zoom school, get on Zoom with me at 4:30 and cook dinner for their families with me. And every once in a while, I mean, not every once in a while, every single class, and almost every person, oh, my mom didn't get me sugar to bake with. Oh, my mom didn't find this. I didn't get that. And we would just have to it was like an episode of Chopped. I'd be like, okay, we have this. Why don't we use this instead or whatever? Okay. So one of the boys just would never have soup stock. And I was like, okay, you're going to use water. You're going to add to your pot a tablespoon of garlic powder, like 2 teaspoons of onion powder. And I don't really measure. I'm just pouring them in. Maybe 2 teaspoons of turmeric. And those are kind of like my basic 3. So if you want to do a soup without soup stock, just add more spices. It could be more garlic, more fresh herbs. And let's say you have a pasta with a soup with oregano like that. I would add more oregano. I would add more of whatever spices are in that soup to pump up the flavor. And the soup that I just had for lunch before this Zoom was like carrots, parsnips, sweet potato, some ginger, garlic. And I didn't want to use soup stock. I wanted it more natural. And I did that. And everybody was like, it was so flavorful. And you probably need to add a little bit more salt because all of those boxed, right, the powders in the soup, they just have so much salt. So you might want to add a little more salt. But all of my cookbooks, the biggest complaint I get is I don't put enough salt in the recipes. And I'm like, yay, right? Because if you put so much salt into a soup, it just kind of gets lost. You can always add more at the end, have kosher salt and just sprinkle a little bit on top and you get a pop of salt. I brought home, I was just in Israel 2 weeks ago. I brought home like a chili salt. So it's got chili flakes in the coarse salt and we sprinkled it in the soup this weekend and that was great.
So do we have, from our audience, do we have any questions?
Can you guys see here? I'm going to turn this down so
Paula?
you can like literally see into the bowl. And here, let me sprinkle some more green things in it so you guys can see this. And then I would grate some more cheese into it too. So imagine I'm sprinkling basil, which I didn't have. So there you go.
Looks
It's a meal in
delicious.
a bowl. And so using the puree, here, I got to cancel this. Using the puree actually worked out fine as compared to the chunks of soup. So I'll taste it and see what the difference is. A couple of things. I do advertise cooking classes every once in a while. I haven't yet kind of put up a schedule of Passover baking classes, which I might have. And I call it like my baking boot camps where people come on Zoom with me. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And they bake in their own kitchens and they're baking for Passover. So if you join my newsletter mailing list at the contact page on the website, you'll find out about those classes. I'm doing like a French baking class, I think this Wednesday or Thursday night. And then the other thing, which you guys may be the first people to know. Okay, I am about to launch a food tour to Israel this summer and a new business venture where I'm going to be bringing people to Israel a couple of times a year for all hands-on cooking classes every day, where you're not just sitting in a chair watching, you're chopping, and we're traveling around the country making all different kinds of food. And we have a wellness component. Every day there's a yoga or Pilates or a hike or a walk or a run, so that every day we move, and then every day we do a lot of tastings, and every day we cook. So it's basically a tour designed based on how I travel when I'm in Israel. So it's for people who've already been to Israel. There's no sightseeing here. It's just all about the food. It's a way to kind of reconnect with Israel on a deeper level. So if to kind of follow me on my social media, I'm on Instagram at Kosher Baker and Facebook, and then I'm also on TikTok as at Chef Paula Shoyer. So find me different ways, and that way you'll know as I kind of publish newer recipes. I'll have new Passover recipes up in the next 2 weeks, as next probably week or so. Boy, I guess I got to get a move on it. But yeah, Passover. It's coming. It's coming for all of us.
I know, Paula, this has been so exciting, and I don't know about anybody else on it, but like I'm ready to begin to look into Instant. So you also, I know you're promoting Instant Pot. You're a spokesperson for that, but how do people find, like, what's the best brand for them? What's your recommendation?
I just bought an Instant Pot for a friend as a gift, and the best price I found at the time was on Walmart.com. But you have to watch, okay? They can be in the high 60s to 80, like $70 to $90 each one. But just keep an eye out, and just like I tend to post, like if I see it on a good price, like I'll post it on my Facebook page, or or so I learn about it often from the Kosher Instant Pot Facebook group. But I'm always kind of on top of that. So like just do some research, and if somebody says, oh, I want to get you a gift, you'd be like, hey, get me one of these, because I mean, I don't really want to buy another one for Passover to have to store it again. I have to make soup on the stovetop, but it's just, my chicken soup comes out so much better. It's so much deeper flavor, and I like the hands-free approach to it too.
Well, does any other comments, any questions for Paula?
And now that you know me, you know how to find me. You can ask me questions. You can join the legions of people who message me an hour before every Jewish holiday with some absolute like tragedy of baking and cooking that only I can answer, an hour before candle lighting. But that's why I hate Thanksgiving, because I will literally get questions at 3 p.m. about pie. And I'm thinking, people like, why are you making a pie on Thanksgiving Day? Like, pies you make the day before. But I answer them all.
I have a quick question.
Hi. Yeah.
Please say hi, Romy. Quick question about frozen meat. Because kosher meat is not everywhere here in the Triangle. And so we buy in bulk when we find it. And I never, ever remember to defrost it when I need it. And so I'm always pulling out frozen meat. And so you said that we can put frozen meat into the Instant Pot. Do recipes generally have separate directions when you're cooking with, or is it the same instructions?
So what's really cool is, remember I talked about how there's the cooking time and then there's the time to pressure.
Yes.
It takes longer to come to pressure when there's frozen meat in it.
So it knows.
But then the cooking, it kind of knows, which is great. I mean, my son, who is kind of my middle son, who's like a rule breaker and not a rule follower, like when he does follow recipes now, and he's become quite the scientific baker and makes jam and bread. It's quite extraordinary. But he literally opens up the fridge. It's like, oh, what do I have? Vegetables, throws them in. Oh, opens up the freezer. Oh, boneless chicken, throws that in, throws in some water, throws in spices, and then pushes the buttons. And he's like, oh, it's a surprise to see what happens. So, but I love that. I mean, the best way to defrost things is to often, like if you forget, is to take your package, make sure it's wrapped well, or put it into a freezer bag and stick it in a bowl of cold water, kind of a room temperature water, and then just keep changing that water every like 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
Somebody agrees with me there. So yes.
She's asking for more. She keeps saying more.
More is an important word.
More.
That's probably what got my daughter to like being like the pudge bowl that she was. But
Well,
but
so
we're all good.
It's refreshing to see a sweet, cute little baby like that on our book festival video.
Say hi.
I know. I babysit my friends' grandchildren because like we miss babies.
So I think we're going to wrap it up if nobody has any questions. Jane, do you just want to tell everybody about the next two today? You're on mute. You're on mute, Jane.
My next step will be ordering an Instant Pot. And then,
buying the book.
of course. At 4 o'clock, we are pleased to have Mark Strauss talking about one-legged mongoose. You'll find out what it is, but it's about growing up in I was going to say shtetl, but no, his father escaped from Ukraine from a shtetl. Many years ago, he grew up on Long Island. He's writing about it. And at 8 o'clock, we have Unstoppable, which has gotten a lot of press by Joshua Green. It's the story of an Auschwitz survivor who became a legend on Wall Street, about Siggy Witzig. So these are our last presentations, and we have enough time to go out, get an Instant Pot, if you live near a store that has an Instant Pot, and cook something for tonight, right?
Jane,
Yep, you do.
Jane,
Yes.
did you said 8 o'clock?
I'm sorry, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Sorry, 7 o'clock.
Okay, great.
1, 4, and 7.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I will verify this Instant Pot chicken soup. It is wonderful and easy, and you can make enough stock to cook other things afterwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm really organized, I'll make beef stock and vegetable stock and chicken stock and label it and be more. But that hasn't happened in a while. But
You mentioned the labels and the.
okay, I'm just going to tell you because I have it right here. Where'd it go? Which is my masking tape.
I think it's more fun to just like guess. You guess the date.
No, I know. I do that too. Like, oh, what's this container in my freezer? I'll defrost it and be like, oh, sweet potato soup. Who knows? My masking tape disappeared. Somebody moved it somewhere. Anyway, I keep Sharpie and masking tape like right in the drawer right here. But it seems to have walked away. But I'll find it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's nice to meet everybody. Please tell everybody you know about my books and about what I do. And I'm still teaching Zoom classes for family gatherings, bat mitzvahs, all kinds of activities. So it's been who imagined that this was a thing to do, but hopefully back in person soon.
Again, thank you so much, Paula, and also Grace. Thanks for your support from Jewish for Good, and hopefully we'll see everybody later.
Bye.
Thank
Stay
you.
well,
Thanks, Norma.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Paula. Bye, everyone.